Hi everyone, this video is going to show you how to fill out the Minnesota DREAM Act. Before we get started, a couple of reminders. Remember, the DREAM Act application cannot be saved, so once you start it, you have to finish it in that same sitting unless you want to do the whole thing over again. Hi everyone, this video is going to show you how to complete the Minnesota DREAM Act. A couple of reminders before we get started. You cannot save this application and return to it later. You have to do the entire thing in one sitting, unless of course you want to start from the beginning all over again. So make sure that you have everything ready to go right away so you can get it done in about one sitting. Most people take between 45 minutes and an hour from start to finish, just so you know how much time you're going to have to put into it. Here are the things you're going to need to fill out the DREAM Act. You're going to need your parents' 1040 forms from 2018. If you filed taxes in 2018, you will also need their 1040 forms. You are going to need an estimate of what is in your parents' bank accounts and your bank accounts if you have them. And you're going to need the ages and names of everyone who lives in your house. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're set and ready to go and start our DREAM Act application. It's really important that you pick the right year. We're going to be filling out an application for 2020-2021 because that is the year that you will start college. So we go ahead and click on that. There's some instructions that you can review at the first part, and we'll go ahead and hit continue. Go ahead and hit apply now. So for this question, are you a U.S. citizen? You actually are going to select that you are not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. This is kind of a weird question, but basically they want to make sure that no one who is eligible for the FAFSA is completing this application. So it's really important that you make sure that you select not a citizen or eligible non-citizen before hitting next. Also hope you like my little porg bird cursor. All right, from here, the information on this page is pretty straightforward. It's going to be your name, your last name, your first name, middle initial. If you don't have a social security number, you check right here. If you do have a social security number, this is where you would enter it. Birth date, address, phone number, email address. So this information, again, all pretty straightforward. I'll stop here and give you some time to fill that out. One thing to mention just really quick on this page where it says, what is your state of residence? That doesn't mean like legal residence. It has nothing to do with any kind of immigration status. What it means is where you live. So you're going to put Minnesota. And then when it says, when did you become a resident of the state? All it's asking is when you moved to Minnesota. So let's say I moved to Minnesota in July of 2005. That's all they're looking for there. All right, so now we're on to the next page. The first question asks about DACA. Anyone can fill out this application whether or not they have DACA. I'm just going to say that I do for the sake of this example. Next question, when you begin college in 2020-2021 school year, what will be your high school completion status? You are going to put that you will have a high school diploma. And then you are going to look for the high school that you graduated from. So we're going to scroll down to the H's. And it looks like Hiawatha actually isn't listed here because we're so new. So we're going to go ahead and put other at the top. The next question asks what level your grade level in college will be. You were going to do never attended college first year. And then for what degree you're working on, go ahead and put your first bachelor's degree. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before July 1st of 2020? No, you will not. And have you attended any colleges after high school graduation? No, you will not. You're just going straight from high school into college. So now this is the part where you're going to enter in colleges that you have applied to. It's really important to remember that the Minnesota Dream Act only works for colleges that are in Minnesota. So you are only going to enter colleges that you've applied to that are in Minnesota. So you can go ahead and find your list. I'm going to say applied to St. Ben's, to Augsburg. I'm just using schools that are all at the top here, to Carleton, and, ooh, what should the last one be? Let's do St. Mary's. These are the schools that your Dream Act is then going to get sent to. If you've applied to more than 4 schools in Minnesota, notice you can add up to 10 schools in your Dream Act. You cannot add more than 10, only can be 10. And remember, they are only schools that are in the state of Minnesota. All right, next page. These are some questions to determine whether or not you have to provide parent information. So I'll just go through and explain what some of them mean. This one's pretty easy. Were you born before 1997? None of you were. You will, for this question, you will not, you're going to answer no to this one. You're going to be working on your bachelor's degree, not a master's or a doctorate degree. If you have children or you will have children that are going to be born by the start of the next school year, do answer yes to this question, because that means that you only have to put your own information in. You don't have to add your parents' information. And this last question about other dependents, that's like if you were financially supporting like an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent and you were the only one that was supporting them, no one else was. As far as I know from my conversations with all of you, no one is in that situation, so you would go ahead and answer no to that one as well. And I would say for most people, all of these answers are going to be no. All right, so once you answer all of those questions, there's another series of questions that'll just pop up as you answer each one. The first 2 ask if you are currently serving in the military or if you have ever served in the military. For most of you, I think all of you, both of those answers are going to be no. This time, so the first part of the question is pretty clear, but it's asking if you have been in foster care. Basically, that means that you would have been removed from your parents' home at any time since you were 13. The next question asks if you are an emancipated minor. This is a very, very rare situation. And again, I'm not aware from having talked to any of you that any of you are in this situation. But what it means is that the courts have legally declared you to be independent from your parents. So that's going to be a no for most students. The next question, does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you? That would mean that somebody who is not your parent, could be an aunt, could be a grandparent, has been legally by the courts declared to have guardianship of you. This is different than just living with an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent. This is only, you would only answer yes if a court has said that your parents no longer are responsible for you. It's your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, grandparent, whoever. Again, this is a pretty rare situation. And the last one, if you in the last year have been at the risk of being homeless, that would be living on your own without parents, or if you were in an unstable housing situation. So if you've experienced any kind of homelessness in the last year, you would answer yes to this question as well. All right, so after answering all of those questions about your personal situation and whether or not you're an independent student, you'll get taken to a screen where it says you'll have an option to check, yes, I will provide parental information. After you do that, you are taken to this screen, which then asks you to enter in information about your parents. Now, the first question asks about the marital status of your biological parents. So this can be kind of tricky, and if you're not sure what to put here, please give me a text or a call and double check with me. This is only asking about your biological parents, which means even if you have lived with, say, your mom and your stepdad since you were 5 years old, you still are going to put divorced or separated or never married and not living together because they only care about your biological parents, okay? If you're living with both of your parents, you're probably just going to put married or remarried. If you're only living with one of your biological parents, it's probably going to be never married and not living together and divorced or separated. So once you choose the marital status of your parents, so I'm going to, for the purposes of this example, I'll show you how to do both. So if I do divorced or separated, for example, it's only going to ask me to provide information about one parent. And they're assuming that is the parent that you live with. If I put that my parents are married or remarried, then I'm going to have to enter information about both of my parents. Before I give you some time to fill out this page for yourself, I just want to talk through a couple of other things. Again, it asks for your parents' state of residence. Same thing as when it asked about your residence. It's not a question of citizenship status or immigration. They just want to know what state you live in, so you'll put Minnesota. The number of family members who live in your parents' household. So this includes your parents, it includes your siblings who live with you, and it includes anyone else in the house who your parents are financially supporting. So let's say that you live with both of your parents, your 3 siblings, and your grandma who gets all of her financial support from your parents. That means that your household is 7 people. But if you live with your parents, your 3 siblings, and an uncle who has his own job and is just staying with your parents, he's not being financially supported by them, then that's only going to be 6 people in your parents' house. And again, give me a text or a call if you've got any questions needing help how to figure this out. How many people in your parents' household will be at least half-time college students between July 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2021? So include yourself in this one. So for most of you, this is probably just going to be 1. But if you have an older sibling who's already in college, you're going to put 2. But it's probably not going to be more than 1 or 2. And then for this last one, this is where you have to list everyone who lives in your house, how they're related to you. So you can choose parent, brother or sister. You choose their age, and then you check whether or not that you will be attending college, or this person will be attending college next year. So for yourself, you also have to put student. So when you write your own name in, you will put student. For the college attending, if you're not sure where you're going to go yet, you can just type unknown. Otherwise, you can put in your first choice college, or obviously if you know that you're going to go to Augsburg, for example, you can go ahead and put Augsburg in there. All right, I'm going to give you some time now to fill out this page for yourself. All right, after you enter information about whether or your parents' name and about how many people live in your house and all of that good stuff, you then get taken to the page that asks you to fill out information about their taxes. So this is the part where you're going to need those tax forms. First, I'm going to show you how to complete this form if your parents do file taxes. And then in about a minute, I'll explain how to do this if your parents do not file taxes. So the first question just asks if they filed taxes in 2018. We're going to start with an example that they did file taxes. All right. And then it asks for 2018, what is your parents' filing status? This is the part where we need to look at their tax 1040 forms. So I've got an example here. This is the form that you want to be looking at. It'll say 1040 in the top corner. The filing status is listed in this very narrow line right here. So these people did married, filed, joint return. All right, so Mary filed joint return. The most other common option that you'd see would be single, would be head of household. So we'll do Mary filed joint return. And then it asks what type of tax return they filed in 2018. This is almost always going to be 1040 unless for some reason your parents filed taxes in another country, but I don't think anyone is in that situation, so you're going to do 1040. And now it asks for their adjusted gross income. So here's what we're going to do. It tells us actually right here that adjusted gross income is found on the 1040 form on line 7. So they do make it pretty easy for you because now all you have to do is go back to this, there we go, that 1040 form. And you're going to look for the part of the form that has like all of these lines that are numbered. So we're looking for line 7 right now for adjusted gross income. That is always on line 7. So here's what I've got for my example for line 7, $50,299. So that's what I'm going to enter right here. Now, if you live with both of your parents, this is where it can get a little bit tricky because you have to break up that total of $50,299 or whatever it is for you into what your parent or what your mom made or what your dad made. If only one of your parents works, then you just enter that total amount for one parent and do 0 for the other one. So let's say your dad is parent 1, he's the only one who's working. I would enter this $50,299 for him and then a 0 for my mom. But if both my parents are working, I want to try to find their W-2 forms. And the W-2 forms, your parents will know what those are, but they're the thing that says how much you made at your job in a year. So a lot of times people just store those with their tax returns. So if your parents give you your taxes, you're probably going to be able to find that W-2 form. And if you've got the W-2s for your parents, then it'll show you, here's how much your dad made, here's how much your mom made, and you can list those in each one of those boxes. If you can't find the W-2 forms, that's okay. Talk to your parents and get their best estimate at about how much each one of them made so that you can split this up equally. All right, next question. Is either of your parents a dislocated worker? A dislocated worker is basically someone who has been laid off from work or has lost their job because of seasonal changes. So if they're working on like a farm and they don't have a job in the winter, that would be a dislocated worker. If both of your parents are employed, or let's say one of your parents is employed and the other just stays at home, you would answer no. And most of the time, you're just going to answer no. If you do have a parent who's been laid off or is currently not working because they have seasonal work, you would answer yes. All right, and this last one just asks if your parents or you use any of these programs. The most common ones are going to be SNAP. So that would be if you have the EBT, the food stamp card. A lot of people use that. And everyone at Hiawatha pretty much qualifies for free reduced lunch. We all get free reduced lunch, so you can go ahead and click that one. All right, so now let's go back to the top and talk about how we do this if our parents don't file taxes. So, all right, we've got parents who don't file taxes. Instead of putting already completed, we're going to do not going to file. And at this point, if your parents do have W-2s that you have access to, it would be really helpful to look at those. But all you're going to do if your parents don't file taxes is just enter how much they made in 2018. So again, if you can find the W-2 form, if they got one, you would enter how much they made. Otherwise, you're just going to have to ask them to estimate about how much they made. Once you do that, all of the questions are exactly the same as if you did file taxes. So like the dislocated worker question and then all of this stuff down at the bottom is still the same. All right, on this next page, it asks about a whole bunch of types of income that honestly most people don't have access to. I'm just going to point out some of the ones that people like are the most common. But if you've never heard of it before, that probably means that your parents aren't receiving it. So you don't need to check any of this. The two most common ones, though, are going to be for child support. So you would check child support paid. Let's say if you're living with your mom and she's paying child support to a previous partner who she has a child with. Similarly, if you are living with your dad and you don't have contact really with your mom, but your mom is still paying child support, you would check that down here. All right, but other than that, unless someone has been in the military or you have an older sibling in college, you're probably not going to check any of these. If you've got questions, go ahead and give me a text or a call when you're filling out this form, and I'll be able to help you work through it and figure it out. All right, the last three questions on this page ask, what is your parents' total balance in their savings and checking accounts? This doesn't have to be exact. It can just be an estimate, but you will need to ask your parents about how much is in their bank account. So I'm going to go ahead and put like $3,000 for my fake parents. The net worth of your parents' investments, including any real estate. So this would be like if your parents owned any stocks. Most people's parents really don't, so you probably don't have to worry about it. If your parents do own any buildings that aren't your house, like let's say they're a landlord and your parents own a house and rent it out to someone else, then you would put that the value of that house in here. But other than that, you don't need to worry about it. And again, if your parents own a business, you would need to put how much that business is worth in here. If your parents don't own a business, then you don't need to put anything. And we're just going to put zeros for both of these here because my fake parents don't have any investments and don't own any businesses. All right, so now it gets to the part where it asks about you and whether or not you filed your tax return. The process is going to be exactly the same if you filed taxes as it was for your parents. So you would do already completed. Probably you're going to put that you filed a single, and then you would hit next, and it would ask you to look at line 7 and to enter in all of the things you entered for your parents. I'm going to assume, though, that most of you probably aren't filing taxes, and that's what I'm going to put for mine, and then hit next. So if you don't file taxes, which I think most of you don't, it is going to ask you how much you earned from work. Even if you did work in 2018, I would just recommend putting a 0 here, because otherwise it can get really messy and really complicated if you don't have access to your W-2 and can't prove how much you made in 2018. So unless you know you have access to your W-2, I would recommend just putting a 0 and moving on. All right, so this is the same page that you just saw for your parents. It is even less likely that you would have any of these apply to yourself and not to your parents. So you probably don't have anything to check here. But you might have a bank account, and you might have some like cash on you that you've gotten. So you will put in how much is in your bank account. I'm going to say I have $2,000 in my fake bank account. But I'm guessing you probably don't have any investments of your own. Whoops, that should be a 0. And you don't own any businesses, so you'll put zeros for both of those. All right, and we've made it to the very last page. I'm not going to submit this application because I don't want to confuse the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. But when you finish, you just want to make sure that you check both of these boxes. You can check for your parent if you want. Hit submit, and then you are good to go. You are done with the Minnesota Dream Act. Once you finish the Dream Act, please let me know. There's a couple of follow-up steps, but I'll talk about each one of those with you individually because it kind of depends on what situation you're in. All right, congratulations. Thanks for sticking with this video. We finished the Dream Act.